Heading for a road trip? How about a family movie night even? Do you need an idea of a fabulous film to watch? I'm Charna Davis Wiese. Today on UCF in Print, Jay Boyar. You've read his movie reviews for 22 years in the newspaper. Now you'll have his suggestions in his new book. Hello, Jay. The book is Films to Go,
Hi.
Films for Travelers. This is the first time we've actually met face to face, but I feel like I've known you for so long.
I feel the same way.
There are sometimes I'm reading and thinking, no. But anyway, this book is just such a cool idea, and I think it's just so different and interesting. And the whole idea is you're going somewhere, you're traveling, you're on the road, you're thinking of going somewhere, anything that has to do with traveling. This book is it. What gave you the idea to put together a book of films for travelers?
Well, a while back, I was on a road trip with my brother and our families, and there was a screen in the van.
You can't get away from
right.
it, can you?
And this was actually a few years ago, so it was still a little of a new thing.
Right.
And I noticed that the kids paid a lot of attention to the screen. In fact, not just the kids. And then that made me, when that was over, I started remembering that when I've been on planes, the person next to me might be watching a movie on a laptop. On a bus, I saw somebody watching Ghost on a portable DVD player and crying. And it made me realize that for the first time in history, people can watch movies while they travel.
That's really a big change, because I remember growing up, it was to go to the movies, it was a big production, and at that time you had to get dressed up and you had to go to a big theater and hope it was something you wanted to see.
Yeah, and things changed. I mean, we had the VCR revolution and the DVD revolution and drive-ins where you could watch a movie in your own car, but still you were stationary. You weren't traveling while you were watching, and so I guess the only exception were those in-flight movies, but you didn't pick those. That's whatever they threw up there. And so for the first time now, we can watch movies while we're traveling, and that gave me the idea, well, if you're going to Los Angeles, maybe you watch a movie about Los Angeles. If you're going to South Florida, you watch a movie about South Florida, and it shows you not just the scenery, but kind of the spirit of the place. And you get there, and it's sort of like using a regular movie as a travelogue to learn about the place that you're visiting.
Isn't that, when you think of it, how far it's come? I remember when, oh gosh, it's made me seem like Crypt Keeper, I'm so old, but I remember when you first were able to see videos at home and pick which movie you wanted, and now the idea of being able to bring it with you.
And people watch them, on their phones now and on their iPods. I mean, it's just amazingly portable. It's
true. My son has School of Rock on his iPod, and I think he's watched it 400 times.
Right.
It's true.
That's a good one, by the way.
You like that?
Yeah, I like that one.
I love that movie. Anyway, Films to Go. Let's talk about how it's sectioned off to any way. It's almost like an encyclopedia.
Well, it is a bit of there's a reference element to it, but there's 3 sections. One section is if you're traveling in the U.S., and it has some of the key cities that people travel to and regions. And then for each city or region, there's 2, 3, 4 movies that I recommend. And then another section is international travel. So if you're going to France or England or Sweden or Greece or wherever you're going, the Caribbean, there's a selection of movies for you. And the third section isn't so much about destinations, but the type of travel you're doing. So if it's like family travel, there's some suggestions, romantic getaways, business travel, traveling by yourself, traveling with friends, all different kinds of travel. There are movies that kind of go with that experience.
Do you ever get tired of movies?
Sometimes if I'll go to a film festival and see, as many as 30 movies in 10 days, or even sometimes more, I need a little break after that. But I love movies.
Do you? Because that's what I was thinking when you said you were in the van with your brother and the kids, and you can't even get away from movies. It's like there's a movie again. I remember, talking about movies on the go, when my husband brought home the first vehicle with one of those video players in it. I was I was not very happy. I said, you know, I really want them to talk with each other and do intellectual things. And then we went on a road trip, and we had to go to the Keys from here. And we had like 4 or 5 movies, and I realized they're not fighting. They weren't really relating intellectually, they were bickering. And it has become such a wonderful thing. And that's why this book is so good, because people have it as such an integral part of their lives. Let's talk about the
when I was
section.
a kid, you know, you'd have a line, and my brother had to stay on this side, and that was our intellectual discussion when we would take
whether
trips.
or not he got too close to the line.
He's over the line, Mom.
He's breathing on
He's on
me.
my side.
You know, now that you mentioned being a kid, do you remember when you first became a moviephile?
Well, yeah, actually, I mean, I sort of remember when I first showed tendencies to be a critic, actually. And
is this going to be a good story?
this is back, in the ancient times. And most people, when I was growing up, had a TV, but only one TV in their house. Only one TV, kids. And it showed about 3 channels. No clicker. You didn't need one.
No Nickelodeon 24-hour kids.
No.
We
and
waited
they
for
signed
Saturday
off
mornings.
a lot of times at like midnight or something, a lot of stations. But anyway, I grew up in a family. I have 3 brothers. So there's 4 boys. And we had to agree on what we were going to watch. Oh. And it had to be peaceful. Because from my mother's perspective, the whole point of having us watch television was for us to be quiet. And if it was going to create a fight, it just was turned off. So we had to somehow agree. And so I got very good at convincing my brothers that what I wanted to watch was what they really wanted to watch.
And what your mother would let you watch.
Well, in those days you could watch whatever. I mean, everything was safe. So, you know, if I wanted to watch a particular show, I had to explain why that show was the best show of the various 3 or 4 choices, and why what they were thinking of watching was not nearly as good. And that sort of started me, you know, thinking like a critic, really. And, you know, sometimes it would be a show, sometimes it would be a movie. And I remember I liked the Marx Brothers a lot more than my brothers. And so I had to, and that's long, like that's, you know, 2 hours, an hour and a half. So I had to convince them it was better than, you know, like 3 or 4 shows. And so that's sort of how I got started thinking like a critic, I think.
So that was going to be my next question. Do you remember one of your favorites or some of your favorites when you were a kid?
Well, when I was a kid, that's easy, because when I was a kid, every movie was great. Because everything was new. See,
I remember that too. Were we just not jaded, or is just things were done differently?
Well, we were seeing all the tricks for the first time.
With new eyes.
And so we you know, everything was great, except I remember we saw the original movie Casino Royale. And the new one was great, but we saw the original one. It was terrible, and even we knew that was a terrible movie. But otherwise, I mean, what we generally saw were Disney movies, and in those days, Jerry Lewis movies were made for children. And then there'd be these odd things that would come in, like Santa Claus Conquers the Martians was an actual movie that we really liked. And you know, there'd be these weird things that were made for kids like that. But we would see anything we could. And one thing you might be interested in is, in my family, we went to the movies differently than I think most people did, because usually it was my dad who would take us to the movies to give Mom a break, and he would take us to the movies the way parents take their kids to the park. In other words, there would be he would never like consult the newspaper to see when the movie started. We would just go whenever it was time to go, whenever he felt like going. Put us in the car, we'd go to the theater, which was a theater with only one movie at it. It wasn't a multiplex in those days.
Oh yeah, they didn't have those.
And we'd walk in like in the middle of the movie every time, and see it from the middle or wherever we came in till the end. And then in those days you could see it again. So we'd just wait, maybe get something at the snack bar, and come back, and then it would start again, and we'd see it from the beginning to where we came in, and then we'd sort of have a whispered discussion. Did we want to stay a little longer, see it to the end? It depended on how we all felt. And I think this helped inspire my imagination, because when I came in the middle of the movie, if there's 10 guys chasing another guy, I'd have to think, well, why would they be chasing him? You know, what could he have done? You know, what's on their mind? I have to make up my own story, see if I was right, and then
see if yours was better.
Right, if mine was better. And also, it probably taught me something about story structure, because I'd have to think of a story that would fit sort of what was going on. But it was a weird way to see movies. I remember my brother said, we saw The Sword and the Stone, the Disney movie, and the sword was out of the stone before it was in the stone in our version. The only exception was the drive-in, because my folks could handle the concept of dusk. And that's, you know, the movie started at dusk. So we could get there before it got dark, and we'd see it from the beginning.
So you just have to wait until it started. It was too late for it to have started already.
And there were little playgrounds for kids in those days. I don't know if there's still
Remember the mosquito coil? Were you from Florida?
No.
Oh,
no.
that's when you went to the drive-ins, they had these little coils that you would light. Oh. And it would keep the mosquitoes away at the drive-in.
That's cool. Nowadays, you know, you can go to where there aren't as many drive-ins, but you can go. They broadcast the signal over airwaves. So you bring a radio with a really good speaker if you want, and you can actually even bring lawn chairs and sit outside near your car and watch it. We did that not long ago, and got some pizza, and it was a great experience.
How fun. I didn't even know. It's amazing how it brings up memories. You know, movies, films are so important in our lives. And when I grew up on South Beach before it was cool, and there was a movie theater called the Carib, or the Carib, I don't even remember, we used to call it the Carib, and it was this old Art Deco theater with this huge hallway, and they had parrots, actual live macaws in the lobby, and that's what I remember. I remember seeing Hello Dolly, and that was it.
See, that's when going to the movies was an experience in itself.
It was a very big deal. You didn't go in flip-flops.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the sections. Now that we talked about South Beach, you do have a South Beach chapter in here, which I'm going to try to find. South Florida. And you don't have one of my favorite movies ever in here. And I wanted to ask you, you probably hated it, because I think I'm the only person who liked it. And I haven't seen it recently because I haven't turned Bravo on lately. And that's The Birdcage.
Oh, I like The Birdcage.
Do you like The Birdcage?
And I like the movie that it was based on, La Cage aux Folles, the French film. You know, when you have
there's a jillion, you have to narrow down.
Certain locations, there were a lot of movies to choose from.
Right.
And other ones, there weren't that many, but I might have wanted that location in the book, so I really had to search, because my criteria were the movies had to be what I considered either a great or a really good movie, and plus it had to have something to say to travelers.
Right.
You know, both. So, like, for example, I really like the Godfather movies, the first two, but they're a bit of a stretch for travelers. So that's not in the book.
That's if you get lost somewhere in New Jersey or something.
Yeah. But like a movie like Around the World in 80 Days, the original won the Oscar for Best Picture. I don't really care for it. It's all about travel, but it's not in the book, because it wasn't good enough as far as I was concerned.
I know I've seen it, but I don't remember. Yeah. Well, you know what? While I'm looking for where these are, we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
An innovative anthrax vaccine, promising research on cancer, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's, and advanced laser developments. In their search for new answers and better solutions, UCF professors are awarded millions of dollars in research funding each year. Needless to say, we're all quite proud of them. UCF stands for opportunity.
Hey everybody, we're back. We're talking with Jay Boyar. You've read his movie reviews for many, many years. This is the book. Let me show you it. I haven't showed it to you yet. Films to Go for Travelers. And I must add that even if you're not getting ready to go someplace, there's some great ideas of things to watch too.
Yeah, I mean, it says 100 memorable movies for travelers and others. And I take that seriously, that and others, because obviously it's a book that I'm hoping will say something to travelers. But if you're just looking, you know, what I notice is when a new movie comes out in theaters, there's all this publicity for it. The movie gets reviewed. It's hard, you know, you don't have to make a lot of effort to know what that movie is about and to get some idea of how good it is. But then when you're going to the video store or looking at your, you know, list of videos to order from a mail order operation, very often people have no idea what they're looking at, no idea what these movies are. Are they good? What are they about? It's hard to know. And with this book, the way it's organized, right at the start of each movie review, there's basic information about it, like how long it is, who's in the cast, what kind of movie it is. Is it a thriller? Is it a comedy? So that will help you figure out, and what year it was made, for example, whether you want to even read the review, whether that's something you'd be even interested in. And then the review itself is about 300 words, and that can tell you a whole lot about the movie.
Without giving it away.
Right. I know, I never reveal secrets, but pack a lot of information in there that will help you decide whether you'd want to actually rent that movie. And then if you just take one more minute and make a little list of the ones that sound good to you and use that when you go to rent movies, at least you'll have some idea what you're getting, you know?
And not go ahead. I've rented ones before, and I put it in. That was a waste of money.
What a waste of time and a waste of money, right?
Right.
But for the low price of this book, you can save all that money.
Pittance,
yeah,
just pittance. Right. But you know something else that I like about this, and I also like about those 100 best film moments, film whatever. So that you were one of the jurors for that, didn't you? Help pick the
yeah, on the American Film Institute.
Right.
Every year they sort of pick a different thing to focus on, and the first thing was just the 100 greatest American movies of all time, and I help with that, and I help with a number of the other lists.
Wasn't number one Wizard of Oz?
Number one, I don't think so.
Or was that the greatest song? Maybe that was the greatest song.
What
it was
I do
the number one that
remember,
I won the bet at home.
It might have been The Godfather, come to think of it.
But you know what? I love those shows.
Or Citizen Kane. It was probably Citizen Kane, and Godfather was probably number two. I think
Wizard of Oz was for Over the Rainbow for the song, which, as you say in here, was going to be cut out of the movie.
Yes, that's right. Harold Arlen's song Over the Rainbow. The studio had thought it slowed down the story and cut it after the first preview, which it actually does slow down the story. He was right about that.
But in a good
But it has
way.
a life of its own that, you know, that movie is almost unimaginable without that song. And it is a great, I think, that's what you were thinking of when the AFI did maybe the best songs for movies. Right, yeah.
And that's what's so, another thing, I'm going to be your PR person. You're going to have to send me a check. That it also has some really cool trivia in it as well. But one thing I was starting to say, what I like about the book and what I like about those 100 best whatever about films is sometimes it's a film that you've seen, you've loved, and it refreshes your memory. I've got to see that again.
Right, yeah, or you've heard a lot about, but never actually saw. And it kind of puts it back in your mind and you say, I really ought to take a look at that.
For the comedy, I think there was one on comedies, and it helped me think of ones to show my kids.
Yeah, Some Like It Hot was number one.
That's what I found under the South Florida section. And you know the funniest thing is, I remember seeing this as a very little girl, but I don't remember. When did it come out? 1959. No, it was probably on TV. It was probably a rerun years later. But it never occurred to me it was South Florida. I'll have to now I want to re-see it.
Yes, it wasn't actually filmed there.
But it was about, that happens a lot, doesn't it?
It was set there. And a lot of the movies in the book are like that. They're not actually filmed in the location they're about, but if they have something of the spirit of it, that I think is worth talking about. And you know, it's funny when you mention that movie because I teach a course at UCF, a seminar on comedies, American movie comedies, and I show Some Like It Hot. And it's almost always the student's favorite film of the seminar, of maybe a dozen films. Even though it's an old film, even though it's in black and white, there's just something about it that even
it's like
younger
precious.
people.
There's something precious about it, and funny, and crazy.
Marilyn Monroe, Jack Lemmon, and Tony Curtis.
Such a great cast. And what amazes me when you see those movies, some of them really transcend time.
Yes.
You can watch Some Like a Hop and it's funny, and my kids hate it. I talk about them all the time, but I brought home the original Pink Panther series, and I told them, wait until you see this. And we're watching, and they're looking at me, and we're watching. I said, it's going to get funny. I know, I remember it being funny. And I don't know if it was the one we picked out. I think it was Shot in the Dark. And it was excruciating, and they were so used to the fast-paced laughs.
Right.
And I said, there's something about a monkey in here. You'll see. Remember you talked about the monkey? That was a different movie, I think. They never watched it again.
Yeah, I remember.
That didn't transcend.
That was one I remember seeing when I was talking about when I was a kid that came out. But I don't remember. I haven't seen it recently. It might even be too slow for me today.
Isn't
I remember liking it then, but. Yeah.
But you have a movie in here on your traveling section, I believe, Going by Air, that I did pull out, and I forgot there were some parts in it they probably shouldn't have seen. Airplane.
Right.
They roared. My children thought that was the funniest movie they ever saw. And one thing that Jay does do in this book and that I love is that you put in lines from the movie.
Yes, quotes, right.
And I'll start the quote. You can end it. Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious, and don't call me Shirley, right?
I love
Leslie
that
Nielsen.
line. He was so wonderful. And you know what? Part of what was so wonderful about that movie that we understand but the kids don't is the very serious, dramatic actors playing these ridiculous roles. They didn't know who Lloyd Bridges was. They had no idea. Right.
It's funny to see people who you usually see manning a submarine or something and in the most dire situation conning around, except they play it very straight. Yeah. It's the situation that makes it funny. They stay very serious, and that's part of why it's so funny.
One of the saddest things is in some of those movies, some things that were annoying to us that were funny in the movies are gone, that the kids didn't get. They didn't get the Hare Krishnas at the airport.
Yeah, there's nothing at the airport now. Just be very careful at the airport.
Not even lip gloss. There's nothing there. Okay, let's see. Solo sojourns. If you're going somewhere alone, and this one I laughed to myself. Okay, you're traveling alone. Watch Psycho.
Yeah, well, I thought a lot before I put that in there, but I thought, well, it's like a warning, like be careful when you're traveling. It's like a little public service announcement Alfred Hitchcock came up with there. But that's a great movie, and also, in some cases, I suggest people maybe see the movies before they go, or when they come back, or not necessarily while they're actually traveling. That might be one. Maybe once you're done with the trip, might be better if you're very suggestible.
Something else that I loved about this, what you talked about in Psycho, besides the line, a boy's best friend is his mother. Right. Hitchcock was so amazing, and those of us who were editors, I was actually trained as an editor. People don't realize when they're seeing something, the whole effect and the experience of something, like the shower scene. And you talk about the editing in that shower scene and what it took to make that 1 minute of film that has now so ingrained in everybody's mind.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact number, but there's many, many short little pieces of film that go into this this very fast scene where someone is stabbed in the shower. And I don't want to say too much about it.
Right.
But it's an illusion created by a lot of little bits of film.
Lots of edits. And that's why I told you, Jay, I really love this book because there's so much fun in it. Okay, let's see. Films to see when you're heading to Orlando Flaw, as we like to call it. Pinocchio.
Yeah, well, in the Orlando section, people who come here by and large go to the theme parks.
Orlando World.
Right. So I have stuff that relates to the theme parks, and I picked Pinocchio. I thought if you're going to any of the Disney parks, you should see one of the great classic Disney movies, really any one. But I put Pinocchio in there because in addition to being a Disney film, a great Disney film, my favorite of his animated films, it's also about a traveler. Pinocchio spends the whole movie traveling, and of course this is a book about traveling. You
know what, we had that on videotape. My oldest child wore it out.
It's
absolutely wore it out. Okay, let's see what else I can find in here. Okay, there's Airplane. All righty, what do we have? Family Travel, one of my favorite movies of all time. I'll say the line, and you'll tell me the movie. What is it with men and asking for directions?
That's Finding Nemo. And that's a fairly recent movie, and that's another thing about the book. There's just a whole lot of different kinds of movies in here. I think it's a more diverse, more eclectic selection than people might expect. Recent movies, old movies, black and white color, happy endings, not so happy endings, all different genres, as they say, all different age levels. I just worked very intuitively in selecting these movies that I really liked that related to travel. And when I was done with my selection, I noticed it really covered a very broad range of films.
And it's great. The book is really good.
Thank you.
By the way, did I mention I really like the book? Jay Boyar, thank you so much for joining us. Teaches at UCF, movie critic extraordinaire, author. The Films to Go, 100 Memorable Movies for Travelers and Others. I'm one of the others. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. I'm Charna Davis Wiese. Thanks for joining us.